Okay, we're going to look at how to do drag and drop in Adobe Edge Animate CC using jQuery UI. Now, what I've done is I've created an image here in Photoshop. It's just Mr. Potato Head. All the components are chopped up and they're all on separate layers and they're named to identify them. Now, we're going to export it ready for Edge Animate. So we go to the File menu, we go down to Scripts, and we go to Export Layers to Files. Now we don't need a prefix, we'll just get rid of that. We're going to do it PNG 24 because they're on transparency. And what I will do is I will now go to the folder where I'm going to put my images, and I'll create a new folder and I'll call it images. I'll create that and just open that up, and now I will just run. Okay, it's been successful. I click OK and I get out of Photoshop. Now here's my folder, and inside here is all my components being chopped up, and it's trimmed to the edge as we told Photoshop to do. Now we need to jump over and get into Adobe Edge Animate. We need to create a new file. We'll bring it here, and I'll just make my stage a little bit bigger, over there, a little bit higher, so it can accommodate all my components. I'll just zoom out a little bit, and what I'll do is I'll just change the background to a color, and there we go. Now once I've done that, I'm going to go File and Save, and I'm going to save it in the folder I set up for this job, which is Adobe Edge Drag and Drop, and I'll just call it Spud Head. Okay, and once I've got that, I will just save it in there. Right, now I will bring in my images, and to bring in the images you go to the library and you click on the plus sign. We need to now go to the desktop, we open up our folder, and inside there we'll have our images that we exported. We click on those, we open them up, and we bring them all up in the library. It might take a little bit before previews are shown, before they're rendered up, and you'll see what it's done is added some numbers in front of them all, which we're going to change. Now all I would do is shift click all those items and I would drag them onto the stage. There we go. And I will just rearrange them, so I'm putting them here. I'll just measure that out so I've got enough sort of space to put these items on. I'll do that. Yes, that's fine. And I'll take those components back there. Now you'll see here that's going behind, so what we want to do is make sure he is actually right at the back. So I'll just rearrange these, moving them around so they're ready to drag and drop in the appropriate places. Now once that's all sort of set up, I will need to come and find where it's got the head and take that back down, and then make sure that everything is all in their appropriate places and nothing's behind anything, and how they're all going to go on that. Yep, I think that's reasonably fine. Now what I will do here is got these numbers in front of them. Now they're not so useful because we're going to name some stuff in code or the script on the actions. So if I just rename these by just deleting those numbers in the front, these are the things that Photoshop created. So I'm just making them all nice and simple. So all it is nose, mouth, real simple stuff. You want to avoid having long names for your elements and your layers, because if you are doing any interactivity it will get caught up in the code. Now once I've renamed them here on the elements that are actually out on the stage, they will also rename them down here. Now Finally, I will just put that here, and I'm just going to move these items just over a little bit to get them out the way. I'll just move him slightly over there. That's it. I think I've got him about there. That should be okay. Right. So all the items are in their situations. We've renamed them with more simplistic, straightforward names, which will help us later on when we're adding to the code. I'll just save that and make sure we're up to date. It usually has a little star up here to say it hasn't been saved. Now, once it's all saved, we need to put some script on the elements. We don't really need to do anything in the timeline. What you could do is you could create all this as one symbol and then place it within another interface if you wish. So what this will be is sort of a symbol within another part of an animation. So you would go into here and do this game rather than just having it as its own timeline. But we'll just give a go and get going, and we need to look at jQuery UI. Okay, we're going to go over to jQuery.com, and here we are in the demos page. Now jQuery UI is really useful if you're making like animated components for interfaces. What we're going to be looking at is Droppable. Each of these components show how it works. They also show you how it will be implemented in the code, and they also give documentation of how these should be set up. So if we click on the drag, it will tell you how it should be implemented, really explain it, give you examples in the code, and just tell you, how it should be set up. So these are really useful resources. Now we need to download, so we go here to download. Now it might be the case with some versions of Edge Animate, they're updating it quite a lot, and I have found that in some of the newer, or you go back to the older versions, that some of these, you have difficulty implementing them, setting them up, because they change the setup and not, it still works well, but how you would implement them. Now one I'm sure of is this one, which is 1.10.4, and once you've selected that, you will just click on download and you're ready to go. Okay, I've just expanded the zipped up file, and I'll open it up, and you've got a number of resources in there. There's some information here about the setup and how you would use all the components. And if I just close that down, but the one we're interested in is this, the JS folder. It's got 3 JavaScript files that we need to import into Edge Animate. I'll close that down and we'll jump over to Edge Animate. And once we're in here, you're in the library. I've just closed up my images there, so it's made some room. Down at the bottom where it's got scripts, I click on the script and I add JS from disk. Now you can also add JavaScript files from online to bring in their online URLs as well. So, but this one we're bringing it from disk. Now we need to open up the JS folder within our folder that we downloaded. So it's a JavaScript folder, and we're going to shift click those 3 and we're going to bring them in. Okay, we brought them in, so they exist in here. So we're all ready to go to wire up our images on there to make them draggable and droppable. So we've loaded in the jQuery UI files and the script and the library, and we're all set to go. Now, the first place I'll go for is I'll just go for the eyes. Now, what I will do is, before I do that, I will go down and click on where it's got cursor down here, and I will put on the pointer. So when we do preview it in the browser, it will have a little pointer to show that this can be moved. Now the first thing I'll do is I can either go down here and add the action here with the code brackets, or I can go up here on the options and I'll bring it up. Now I'm going to do a mouse over event. Now the mouse over event, I need to put in some script here. We need to have a drop area here, so when it drops on the area where the eye should be, later on it's going to stick to it. So it's easily done. So what I need to do is make sure that this is lower down than the eyes. So I need to go to click on where it's got the head, and I'll just get the ellipse tool and I'll just drag out an area on here. Now we're going to make it invisible a bit later on, but one of the most important things here is I'm going to say I hit. So it's going to be I hit, and that's important because it's going to have it called up in the code. Now once we've got that, I'm just going to type in a droppable bit of script here, and again you can get this from UI, jQuery UI. I'll go back to the demos. We're going to go for Draggable first. That's what it's doing. We've got the source code. That's what you would put on your website within the HTML code that links it up. This is the sort of stuff that Edge Animate is doing behind the background, but if you are doing it on a website, that's what you will need to set up. Now what I need to do is go here to the information about it, and we want to have something that's going to be a drag. It's got lots of different things on there, and if we go and something like drag, so what will happen here, it tells you what it's going to be. So all I need to do is call it out the name, say it's draggable, and that's it. So I will start off doing that. So if I go back here, now I've got this in here, so I need to start off with sim, which is short for symbol. It's calling up the object, and then we need to put the $sign in. Now once that's in there, I'm going to open up my brackets and I'm going to type in speech marks eyes, and close the speech marks and close the brackets. Why I'm calling it eyes is that's what this object here is called. It's called eyes. If we click on that, it's called eyes, so we make sure that that's what it's called, so it's identifying in there. Then I put a dot, full stop, and then I put draggable, and that just lets it know that this object is draggable. And if I open the brackets, close the brackets, and then I just do a semicolon, and then I'm going to preview it in the browser. Once I preview it in the browser, here it is. It's just droppable and moving around. Not exactly what we want yet, so we'll just go back and have another little look at that. There's a few more things we need to set up there. Now, first of all, I'll just return here. Now we need to put the droppable, so this is going to be droppable. So if I go back here to the jQuery UI and go all the way up here, I go to the demos, I go droppable. Yeah, it's going to drop on a target. If you're doing it on a website, this gives you instructions how to set it up with this script. Animate's doing this for us in the background. We need to go here and we just need to say drop. So that's what it's going to be. We're going to just drop it. Now what it'll be, it's just got it here. It just says, you're going to define it and its name and say it's droppable. So we'll go back here and we'll just type that in. Again, you've got to set it out like this because we're in Animate, so it's calling up the symbol, and then we're going to put the $sign in, and then we're going to open the brackets. Now this is going to be where we're going to drop it. So this is going to be where we said I hit. So this is this area. So again, we need to call that up, and I called it I hit, close the speech marks, close the brackets. So that's the I hit, that's where we're going to drop it. Now I just put full stop and I put droppable, and once I've got that, I will then need to add something else as well. Now I've spent droppable wrong there, put a no in it, make sure it's all right. I need to put something else there that says it's going to accept it once it hits on there. So I'll go back to my documentation here. I'll just go back up to the top of the page here, and here in this part it says accept. So it tells you accept. So we need to put accept and say what it needs to accept. In our case, it's going to accept the eyes. So it's going to be, after droppable, it's going to be accept. So we're going to have this information on here. So I might just copy that there. I'll just copy it, and I will come back and I will just paste that in. I'll just pull that down to make it a little bit more neater, and then I'll just move this down here like that. Okay, as we're in Edge Animate, I need to add something a little bit extra. You got to add the sim dot dollar sign. So sim symbol dot dollar sign before that to define that. So we've set that out. Now what we want to do is we'll just check and see, is it working? It's doing that, but what it's still not doing is we want it to snap to here, and if we don't get it here, it springs back to its original position. Now if I go back here, we can put a little bit of code in here to tell it that we want it to spring back. Now if I go back to the documentation here, this is in the section which is to do with Draggable. So I go here to the demos and I do Draggable, and when I go for the documentation, we are looking for Revert. So what it's going to do is revert back to its original position. Now it's got it here, it's got to say, you know, define it, it's draggable, and then inside here it says revert true, and it gives you some information about it. If set true, the element always reverts. Now if set to invalid, reverts only occurs if the draggable area has not been dropped on a droppable location. So that's exactly what we want. So we want to have it to be invalid. So what I will do is I'll just sort of copy that there with the true on it, or you can type it in, it just so I remember it, and I bring it back here and I place it in here, and I replace true for invalid, and that is going to be in speech marks. So it's going to be invalid, and then there's going to be a little curly brace after it, and that should be it. And if we do it now, we drag it, whoa, it doesn't make its target, it goes back. But then if we put it here, it's done it, and then it goes back. See, it stays on that target. So we've done it until we set it up. We can maneuver it, and that's where the actual drop area comes in handy. Now, if I go back there now, that's what we've done. So all you will need to do now is make this area transparent. So all you would do is click on that, and when I take that right down, make it transparent, and I do it again, lo and behold, it's pretty seamless on there, right? And I'll just refresh the browser, I drag it out, and if it doesn't do it. Now the one last thing I will do is I want to have some indication that it's moving around, and when I click on it and drag it around, there's some movement. So I want it to actually the opacity to change. So if I go back here, I go back up the top, and what I want to do when it's draggable, I want to change the opacity of the image. So when I move it around, it changes, and again it's a draggable. So what I will do is I click on here, and it has to do with the opacity, and it tells me here I can add this. I could say what the opacity is, and that looks pretty good. So you know, I will just sort of add that. I only need to copy that, and I'll go for 35 opacity, and I'll go back here again, go back in my code, and where I would put it, I would put it inside here and place it inside here. And then what I need to do is a little comma. So there's two things in there. One, it's handling the opacity, and one, it's reverting. If I preview it in the browser, you'll see what happens. I click it and see how it just sort of drops the opacity. You could, you know, go back and change that, I guess. If you go back here and bring up the code. Maybe I could do it something like about 0.50, and I do it. Don't know if you'd noticed that. Maybe it's a little bit less. So that's what it's doing. So when we drag it, it gives you an indication that a drag is happening, and then I place it there. Now what would happen now is you would come back here and you would set up some other hotspots. So I come along here and I'd set up one for my nose, and I come up here and make sure I drag them all down to down the bottom, and I call it nose hit. Okay, and once I've got nose hit, I would then move on to another one, and I would drag that out here. And this one, I would call that mouth hit. And once I've got a mouth hit, I would want to go up to the top and have one across here. And it's gone up to the top there. I'll call that hat hit. And again, I'll move that down so it's underneath all the objects. And then I would do ones for the arms. So I do ones for the arms, so I can drag that out, move that around on top of there. So that's where the arms are going to go. And I need to make sure which arm it is. So this is going to be right arm hit. And the last thing we need to do is do the ears. So if I do that here, move that over on that. And then again, I need to do, this is going to be right ear hit, right ear, left arm. And finally, I just need to do one more. I just drag that out there, like that. And this one needs to be left ear hit. Okay, so all those hotspots are all lined up. And what you can do is select them all, and you can then take down the opacity of all those objects. Once they're gone, you can bring them back up. And what you would do is go through all these objects. So say, for example, if I wanted to do my right arm, which is up here, then I do a mouse over. And what I would need to probably do is, I'll just delete that before I do it. I'll get rid of that. If I went to the eyes, all I would need to do is copy all that code because it's all fine. And then I went to the same right arm and I do mouse over, and underneath here I paste it in. So the only things I would need to change would be, I need to type in exactly what this is. It's right arm. So right underscore arm. And then down here, I would say what it's going to be. So it's going to be right arm hit. So this is the droppable area. It's going to be right arm hit. I need to put the speech marks back. And then again, I can copy that and I can paste that in there for this one. Okay, so I'll make sure I haven't spelt anything wrong. So right arm hit, and let's see if I do that now. My eyes should work okay, and what I need to do is get the right arm and move it here. That's fine. I'll just refresh it and see what happens if I don't get it anywhere, and wherever it is, and then it gives you a chance to move it. Now you'll notice I don't have the pointer, so what I will need to do is make sure I click on those objects. I can shift click them all like that, and I can just do the pointer on all of them. And now if I go back, previewing the browser, the pointer will be out for all of them. And all you will need to do is go through the rest of those objects. Click on the mouth. I'll probably need to go back and make sure I've got the code and go through. And here we have the mouth. Again, paste that in, and we're looking for mouth, and it's going to be mouth hit. and it's going to be mouth down the bottom. So you just need to be careful how you sort of set those out. If we do that now, move that here, it will stick there. But if we refreshed it, it would do the same thing. It would go back to the original position. So all you're doing is making sure you go through all these items, put them all on here. If they don't go there, they can go back. You might have to adjust the actual hotspots on here and make them smaller by, or larger by, you know, bringing them up to see where they are. And you just go through all those other items. So you've got to do the arm, all the other ones, and then you have a droppable animation like this that you can use as a game. Ideally, you can select this as a symbol in its entirety and place it into a larger project or interface.